Welcome back to another fun-filled show. I'm your host. He is Blanchard, aka Free Blanche, aka Blanstradamus, aka Blanchy Kruger. Today I'm going to be discussing the whole Larry Hoover situation. Today's title is When Judgment is the Harvest, the Seeds of Larry Hoover. Now, I'm not very familiar with Larry Hoover. I know that he started a gang, uh, Gangster's Disciples. I'm simply going to read from Wikipedia and I'm going to give my take on this whole situation. Um, I also know that Larry Hoover is a respected person in the black culture. If he is respected in black culture, then that's not good because black culture is anti-God. As I've often said, black culture is demonic and it's satanic because of what black culture promotes and what it allows and what it develops. And it develops a rebellion against God. But I'm simply going to read from Wikipedia and give my summation on what I think about this whole Larry Hoover situation. Larry Hoover Sr., born November 30th, 1950, is an American former gangster and street gang kingpin. He is the founder of the Gangster Disciples, a Chicago street gang that over the years extended to multiple cities throughout various states. Remember that. Nationwide. Hoover was serving 6 life sentences at the ADX Florence prison facility in Fremont County, Colorado. He was already serving a sentence of 150 to 200 years for a conviction in Illinois State Court for the 1973 murder of a 19-year-old William Young. However, in 1997, following a 17-year investigation, he was convicted of an additional 40 counts, including conspiracy, extortion, money laundering, and running a continuing criminal enterprise from inside the state prison, and receive additional life terms in federal court. He has made multiple attempts to have his sentence shortened. American rapper and fellow Chicago native Kanye West has been a longtime advocate for Hoover's commutation. West urged President Donald Trump to do so at a televised White House event in 2018, hosted the Free Larry Hoover benefit concert alongside Drake in the late 2021, and referenced Hoover in songs such as Jesus Lord and River. On May 28th of 2025, Donald Trump commuted his federal prison sentence. However, Hoover must still serve his 150 to 200 year state sentence for his 1973 murder conviction, but is eligible to seek parole on the charge since the crime was committed before Illinois abolished discretionary parole in 1978. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, parole is not out of question for Hoover, as the Illinois Prisoner Review Board has freed roughly 50 elderly inmates serving time for murder under the old code between 2010 and 2020. So let's look up commute. What does it mean to commute a sentence? To commute a sentence is the power to substitute a sentence imposed by the judiciary for a lesser sentence. In other words, it means the power to reduce or lessen a sentence resulting from a criminal conviction. For example, a 10-year sentence may be commuted to a 5-year sentence. It is a part of a broad clemency powers over federal offenses granted to the President of the United States under the U.S. Constitution. Similarly, the United States Constitutions grant the governor clemency power over state offenses. So far, my take is that Larry Hoover started a gang, and that gang went nationwide. And he was convicted of a lot of things. Now, we're going to be honest right now. We're going to be mature. We know what happens with gangs in the black community. The gangs in black communities bring death, destruction, and damnation. So we know that Larry Hoover starting this gang has left thousands upon tens of thousands of young black men dead, and thousands upon thousands of families shattered and destroyed. So we know that generations were lost behind gangs and gang violence. This is not exclusive to Larry Hoover. This is anybody that's starting a gang. This is what happens. So the culture, again, black culture glorifies stuff like gangs, and it glorifies people that start gangs. So again, I told you all that black culture is anti-God. All this commotion around Larry Hoover, but no one ever talks about the victims. One thing you will find in the black community is that no one cares about the victims, and the victims far outweigh the people that start these so-called movements in these gangs. Nobody cares about the victims because the victims represent accountability. This is why black people hate the victim, because the victim means that a wrong occurred. The victim means that somebody did wrong. The victim means that justice needs to be served. So the very fact that there is a victim, means that accountability has to be present. And that's why black people hate the victim. That's why they never bring up the victim, because the victim means that a wrong has been done. Hoover was born on November 30th, 1950 in Jackson, Mississippi. He moved to Chicago, Illinois at the age of 4. At the age of 13, Hoover dropped out of junior high and joined a gang called the Supreme Gangsters when he was involved in petty thefts and muggings. In 1968, Hoover was romantically involved with Wendy Jenkins, with whom he shares one of his 3 children. They were denied marriage by the Illinois Department of Corrections until January 9th, 2020, when they were deemed legally married by the U.S. Department of Justice. Hoover was formerly associated with GDN Lieutenant Amarion Taylor. He also involved himself in fighting cold cases about murders that are only now coming to light, also tied to the organization. And I think that GDN stands for Gangster Disciple Nation. In 1969, Hoover and David Barksdale called a truce and decided to combine both of their respective rival gangs, Supreme Gangsters and Black Disciples, together to become the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, BBC. Death of Barksdale and Disciple takeover. And I'm giving you the history because no one's going to tell you about what happens, the Trail of Blood. Now, it's funny that everybody talks about the Trail of Tears with Native Americans. Everybody loves bringing that up as an indictment on the American founders, as a evidence that America is racist, the Trail of Tears. But the Trail of Tears doesn't even compare to the Trail of Tears left by these gangs in the Black community. The Trail of Tears doesn't even compare. Matter of fact, let me just look up how many people died on the Trail of Tears. How many people died on the trail? Right here, pop right up, Trail of Tears. This states that, let me see. This states that, let me see. Some United States citizens disagree with the actions of the government, including Congressman David Crockett of Tennessee. Christian missionaries also denounced the injustice of the policy. Noted missionary Elijah Butler, who accompanied the Cherokee and served as their doctor, estimated that over 4,000 people, a fifth of the Cherokee population, died along the trail. So over 4,000 died in this infamous Trail of Tears. And we know that Black people dying alone from homicide is double that, easy. We're talking 8+ to 10,000+ a year of Black people dying from homicide in the Black community. So the trail of tears that everybody loves to bring up doesn't even compare to half a year in the Black community. And it definitely doesn't compare to the gang violence that has occurred throughout the decades. But let's get back to Larry Hoover. Death of David Barksdale and disciple takeover. 1974, after the leader of the Black disciples, David Barksdale, died of kidney failure stemming from injuries incurred in a 1970 assassination attempt. Hoover took over the reins of the Black Gangsters Disciple Nation. He deemed himself the chairman of the crew. At the time, the disciples had control of Chicago's South Side turf. Under Hoover's rule, the Black Gangster Disciple Nation took over a majority of the Chicago drug trade. Now, we know in order to take over drug territory, you are going to have to kill. In order to take over a drug territory, you are going to have to kill, and families are going to have to be destroyed, and neighborhoods are going to have to be terrorized. Again, if you're going to take over a drug area or area for drugs, that means you're going to have to kill, you're going to have to destroy families, you're going to have to terrorize communities. So that's what's taking place. In 1978, while incarcerated, Hoover formed the Folk Nation, which added all gangs in his personal likeness and interests to relate to the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, such as the Lady, Satan, Maniac Latin, Spanish Gangster Disciples, Ambrose and the Tutu Boys, Two Sixers, Simon City Royals, Northside Insane Popes, La Raza Nation, Spanish Cobras, Imperial Gangsters, Harrison Gents, and the Latin Eagles. The Folk Nation maintained their ground from within prison property to drug-ruffled streets. So again, he expanded his gang influence. While Hoover was incarcerated, he ran the gang's illicit drug trade both in prison and on the streets, starting from Chicago's West Side and later extending throughout the United States. Similarly, certain parts of the affiliated Folk Nation Alliance began to expand to parts of the United States Midwest. As of 2022, the Gangster Disciples has confirmed expansions to Indianapolis, Kansas City, Minneapolis, Detroit, Milwaukee, Birmingham, Cincinnati, Memphis, and Hoover's birthplace of Jackson. Now imagine that Hoover was able to extend his roots to all the democratically ran cities. Isn't that ironic? That Hoover was able to spread this to conveniently all the cities that are ran by Democrats, all the cities under communist influence, all the cities run by the liberals. Isn't that ironic? The same people that tell you how bad conservatives are, that tell you how bad the right is, tell you how bad Republicans are, the same people this was able to spread conveniently to all of those cities. So what am I saying about Larry Hoover so far? What I'm saying is that to whom much is given, that much more is required. So if God gave you a gift and enabled you to organize people all over the world, to whom much is given, that much more is required. So that means that if that is your gift to organize a nation of people, then that means you have to be that much more righteous. You have to be have that much more character. You have to be that much more of a follower of Christ. Everything is to the extreme when God grants you these great gifts. But on the flip side of that, your punishment is going to be greater. You're going to get whipped with many stripes. That which a man soweth, he shall also reap. The Bible says, do not be mocked, for that which a man soweth, he shall also reap. That means that people are doing things and they believe they're going to get away with it. This is why the scripture says, thou shalt not be mocked. Let me see. I want to get the right scripture. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get through it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Galatians 6, 7 through 9. Be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whosoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. Verse 9, and let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. And so we see that people are being deceived, believing that they can mock God. And mocking God is you thinking that you can do things and get away with it. That is you mocking God, believing that you can sow these seeds and not reap a harvest. Today's title is When Judgment is the Harvest, the Seeds of Larry Hoover. The folk nation, including that of the Black Gangsters Disciple Nation, also personified a rivalry with the People Nation, which included other gangs such as the Almighty Black Peastone Nation, run by Jeff Ford, who today shares the same prison facility as Hoover and is also a Mississippi-born native, Almighty Vice Lord Nation, Latin King, Mickey Cobra, Southside Almighty Insane Popes. The Southside faction were rivals with the Simon City Royals, Satan Disciples, and the Two Sixers, causing them to splinter themselves from the North Side faction. Almighty Saints and the Four Corner Hustlers. The Gangster Disciples also engaged in a city rivalry with South Memphis crew, the Love Murdering Gangsters, formerly LMG Mafia. Again, so imagine just forming this gang. Look at what happened, because this is what sin does. This is what the enemy does. The enemy is clever. You're not just going to start one gang and it's going to stay one gang and that's it. No, sin multiplies. It grows. It compounds with interest. And so starting that gang, look at the ramifications. Even the gangs formed gangs and were fighting each other. So not only were the gangs terrorizing the streets, not only were the gangs killing, not only were the gangs selling drugs, not only were the gangs destroying families, but they were also fighting with other gangs and also fighting with each other. So I'm going to ask you all a tough question. What does Larry Hoover deserve? Based on what we know, what does he deserve? Because that which a man soweth, he shall also reap. And even when he was locked up, he was doing stuff for the streets. Even locked up, he was calling shots on the street. You think drugs were being sold? Yes. Do you think people died? Yes. You think families were ruined? Yes. So even when he was serving out his punishment, he was still spreading death, destruction, and damnation on the streets. What should be his judgment? Dispute with the Black disciples. In 1989, the Black Gangsters Disciples began having leadership problems as they noticed Hoover's leadership of the Folk Nation Alliance deteriorated once he shifted his role focus toward the now splintered Gangster Disciples. The decline of the BGDN leadership infuriated a majority of its members and resulted in the two gangs separating into the aforementioned Gangster Disciples and the reincarnated Black Disciples. One instance of their split, and later anonymously, was a drug dealing dispute in Inglewood, neighborhood of Chicago's South Side, which escalated into a shooting that killed several people. By early 1993, Hoover claimed to have renounced his violent criminal past and became an urban political celebrity in Chicago. Hoover proclaimed that the GD initials had changed to mean growth and development. As of July 2022, Hoover confirms that he no longer affiliates with the Gangster Disciples and wants no part of the gang whatsoever. He also claims that he was no longer the Larry Hoover people sometimes talk about, or he who is written about in the papers, or the crime figure described by the government. Many believe it was a ruse for his plan to have his sentence reduced or either way appealed. Ronnie Bo, formerly known as a national spokesman for the Gangster Disciples, has officially denounced his association to the gang in a new song titled Digital Social Hour. So we know, at least by 1953, he renounced his violent criminal past. But my question is, just because you change it from Gangster Disciple to growth and development doesn't mean you're not going to reap a harvest. Listen, God is going to forgive you, but it doesn't mean you're not going to be punished. God is going to forgive you, but it doesn't mean you're not going to see justice. And so what I'm saying is, just because people want him to be free doesn't mean he deserves to be free. Again, because nobody is talking about the victims that are too numerous to count. We are talking about victims dying for decades nationwide. And you all are telling me now that he's supposed to be a hero? What are we talking about? Most folks are going to be upset with what I'm saying, as if what I'm saying is a lie, and it's not. People are dying every day because of gang violence. And this is one of the people responsible for spreading gang violence around the country. What type of punishment does he deserve? What type of punishment does he deserve? This said that he denounced it in 93. Did he really? We don't know. What we do know is that even when he was locked up, he was calling shots from inside the prison. We're talking about children dying because we know who the gangs target. They target the young. So we're talking about a movement started that spawned across the country that literally ruined the lives of children. On top of families, on top of communities, but children. So my question is, what should be the punishment? What should be the punishment? Y'all love Boosie, but he had little Marlo killing people. But we love Boosie. What should be Boosie's punishment? Marlo was too afraid to testify against Boosie because I heard they were threatening that boy's family members and may have even done something to him. I don't know. I'm just going by the rumors. But that boy looked up to Boosie. Had a tattoo that said something like Boosie's hitter or something. I'll get him Boosie or something. That was tatted on him. But we celebrate and praise Boosie. This is what I'm talking about. Black culture is demonic and satanic. You see, the problem is that most of you all have never worked in these communities. You've never been in what they call the trenches. You don't know what it's like to have one of the children that you're working with end up dead, or get 15 years in prison, or get life in prison, or end up killing someone. You don't know what that's like. You don't know what it is on the ground level to see the damage that all this stuff causes. Y'all are so caught up in the culture, you don't know how many folks are suffering. How many lives are ruined behind this? How many children are traumatized? How many families are traumatized behind this? How many folks got PTSD from this? This ain't the white man. This ain't racism. This is not systemic oppression. This is Black people indulging in Black culture, a culture bent on the destruction of the world. Not just America, not just Black people, the world. They want Black culture spread around the planet to usher in the Antichrist. You see, none of you all don't know the pain in people's eyes. You never sat in the courtroom watching somebody getting 15 years. You never sat in the courtroom watching a child getting 20 years. We're talking about 15, 16, 17. You don't know what it's like to have one of your proteges killed because they broke into a police officer's house and tried to rob him. Or they tried to steal somebody's car in the driveway, got killed. You don't know. You don't know what happens. The trail of tears y'all love so much. You don't know the trail of tears left behind all of these gangs. All these tens upon tens of thousands of babies dying behind this madness. But you love Boosie and his Free Larry Hoover. It's disgusting. And I rebuke it. I reject it and I rebuke it. Galatians 7 through 9. I'm sorry, Galatians 6, verses 7 through 9. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. Let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. So the lesson in that is that we should be planting seeds of righteousness. We should be planting seeds of faith. We should be planting seeds of obedience. We should be planting seeds of love. We should be planting those types of seeds to reap our harvest, not reaping death, not sowing death, destruction, and damnation, and then expecting a reprieve in the end. But it's a trail of bodies that nobody's accounting for. Now, it's funny to me that the trail of tears is the everlasting indictment on the United States. But for some reason, the trail of tears isn't an indictment on Larry Hoover. Isn't that ironic? Isn't that ironic that when it comes to white people, the trail of tears is a forever indictment. But when it comes to this black man and the so many bodies, we can't even count them, all of a sudden now, it doesn't matter. He deserves to be free. It's not up to me whether he's free or not. It actually really doesn't matter to me. What matters is the culture and how destructive and demonic and detrimental it is to anybody that indulges in it, not just black people. Again, don't be deceived. You are going to reap what you have sown. That goes for everybody. Just because you all are in your feelings doesn't mean that God's word isn't true.